So at this point, this is another refresher, and the assumption is that you've already isolated an object in Photoshop. If you don't know how to do that or unsure, I have another tutorial in terms of isolation, so look for that on Blackboard. Right now, what I'd like to do is show you how to place an object in Illustrator and change the background. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. So according to at least the skills building exercise, we're going to open up an Illustrator document 6 inches tall by 4 inches wide. So first I'm going to go to Illustrator, and I'm going to go New File, go to a new file. And now under the preset details, I might change this to exercise. And then make sure that we're in inches because there are other increments so that we know what we're doing. And I'll change this from a width of 4 inches and a height of 6 inches. Once I've changed that, I hit create, and then I open this up, and I am now in Illustrator. This is the artboard here. Illustrator has a bunch of panels. The two that we'll be working with mostly right now is the Properties panel and the Layers panel. And there's the toolbar on the left-hand side, and we'll be working with the Rectangle tool mostly. Also, we'll be using probably the Selection tool as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is put in the isolated object in that we got from Photoshop. So we're going to go to File and Place. Now this is very important. Don't copy and paste. That will mess things up. So make sure that you do the Place command under the File pull-down menu. You hit Place, and then what I'm looking for is the Tricky Sunflower, but I'm looking for the PSD, not the JPEG. So I click the Tricky Sunflower PSD, and I hit Place. Now the way I will place it is I will click and drag. Notice that my cursor has an image already associated with it. If I just click it, it'll end up being too big, so I'll click and drag, and I can resize this later if I want to. So I have it there, I've placed it. I'm going to go to my Selection tool, which is the black arrow tool, and that allows me to move it into a location. I tend not to want things completely centered, so I'll put it off in the corner, and maybe I'll make it bigger. If I'm making it bigger, one thing I want to do is I want to hold on to my Shift key. If I don't, I can distort the image. This is me not holding into the Shift key, so make sure that the Shift key is held so you don't distort the image. So I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger, and then click and drag and kind of move it over a little bit. So I want it somewhere there. So now I've placed it. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to change the background, and there's a number of ways of doing that, but I think it's, for me, a little bit easier if I change the background by simply putting a rectangle of the color that I want behind the sunflower. So I'm going to grab the Rectangle tool, which is right here. There's a bunch of other tools there, the rounded rectangle, ellipse, but I just want the rectangle. So the easiest way to make something the exact size, I know that my artboard is 4x6, is I just click once. And notice I have a Rectangle tool, and I can adjust my width. I want my width to be 4, and I want my height to be 6. And then I hit OK. I know this is the exact right size. I'm just not sure it's not in the right location. So I just grab my Selection tool and I move it into the right location. Right there. All right, so notice now I can't see my sunflower anymore. And the whole point of this is to make sure that I can change the color. So I need to change the order of this. I also want to draw your attention to the Appearance panel. The Appearance panel right now has a fill of white and a stroke of nothing. If you don't have a stroke of nothing, go and click on that stroke panel and just make sure that the square with the red line through it is selected. We don't want a stroke on this. So the first thing I'm going to do, maybe just to make sure that I understand what's going on, is I'm just going to select a random color. This is orange right now. And I'm going to go to my Layers palette. So I'm in the Properties. I'm going to go to Layers. And I have one layer right now, layer 1, but notice I can't see very much, and that's because this triangle has not been selected. So I'm going to select that triangle, or they call it a caret. And the way that Illustrator works, it's not as layer dependent, although it does use layers. What it thinks about is objects. So there are two independent objects right now, one sitting over the other. The one on top is the rectangle, and the one below is the selection that I've made. And that's how come you can't see the flower, because it's not in the right order. So I can change that order simply by clicking on one of them, click, hold, and drag underneath, and now I've moved the rectangle below. So now I can see the sunflower. It's looking a little orange to me right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Properties panel and go again to the Fill, and I've got a swatch. These are my default swatches. And as you can tell, my color selection isn't awesome. I mean, there's, I don't know, 30 or 40 colors. And I want to draw your attention first to the fact that there's a little library in the bottom left-hand corner here called the Swatches Library. And what I'm going to have you do is go to the Art History and go to Baroque. And the neat thing is, because this rectangle is selected, and you can tell it's selected because it has a blue bounding box and has these little points on it. If yours doesn't have that, make sure it is selected simply by taking the selection tool, clicking on the rectangle, and you should see those. That allows me to go to individual colors, and it will select in real time the colors that are available. So at this point, it doesn't really matter. You know, this is a matter of personal preference. I think I find that too dark. That might be where I want to go right now with this one. All right, so I have that in place. Now, notice that when I clicked on the library, it opened up another swatches panel. And then I have my default swatches panel here. Also note that because I've picked that color is now both in this little swatches panel, and it's also over here. Let's say I want to have that for future reference. I can actually click, and I can actually click from here. I'm struggling here for a second. Pardon me, hold please. All right, so the first thing I might want to do is when I go to the window pull-down menu, if there's something I'm missing and I want to see it, I can go down here and find swatches. And now I have what I did when I called up swatches. Now I have my swatches panel, and I have the specialty swatches panel, let's just call it that. And now I can take this thing and drag it here. Now notice what happens. It actually puts it right here. So I can, let's say I decide to change the color, but then I want to change the color back. I have already selected it here, so I can put it back here. So that's a good idea. Again, drag it from this swatches panel into my default, and it will be there for me. All right, so now, and I can start building color palettes that way as well. And color palettes building is going to be something that's important. So now you know how to bring something in to, you can create an Illustrator file, you can bring something from Photoshop into Illustrator, and also you know how to change the background.